how to go about each of those questions. All right. So without further ado, let me share my screen with all of you. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, Rutu Parna.
Amazing. So we'll start off with the overview of the test because I want to make sure that all of you have a clear idea about what the test consists of, what are the different sections that are tested in the test, and what kind of questions do we get in all those different sections, right? So first off, there are 4 skills that are tested in the TOEFL IBT test. All 4 language skills, which are reading, listening, speaking, and writing. In the reading section, you get 2 reading passages with 10 questions based on each passage. The estimated time for reading is going to be 35 minutes. That means the test taker will have to answer a total of 20 questions in 35 minutes, and the score ranges from 0 to 30. So the score ranges from 0 to 30 for all 4 sections, all right? Which makes up for the total score of TOEFL IBT as 120. There is no negative marking in the TOEFL, which is a great advantage for all test takers. Even if you do not know the answer for a particular question, then it's always a better idea to guess or to make a calculative guess rather than skipping a question, all right, or leaving a question unanswered. Please note that there is no passing score or failing score. So it depends on the university or college that you're applying to and what is the cutoff there, all right? So in the reading section, you will have to answer a total of 20 questions in 35 minutes. So that means we also have to keep in mind the pacing part of the test as well. In the listening section, you get 3 lectures with 6 questions based on each lecture. You also get 2 conversations with 5 questions based on each conversation. So in the listening section, a test taker has to answer a total of 28 questions in 36 minutes, which also includes the listening time of the audience. Next up, we have the speaking section, wherein we have 4 questions that are designed for the section, 1 independent task and 3 integrated tasks, right? So the independent task requires you to give your opinion on the certain issue or the topic that is given to you. And the integrated task basically tests you on how well you can summarize and paraphrase the information and integrate the information as well. So the speaking section is allotted 16 minutes. Here also the scoring remains the same. And the last section of TOEFL IBT is always the writing section, wherein you have 2 sections or 2 questions that are designed for the section. And those tasks are pretty much similar to the speaking section as well. So we have 1 integrated writing task, and then we have something called writing for an academic discussion task. So the writing section altogether contains 29 minutes. All right, and the scoring remains the same here as well. Please remember that the order of the sections are going to be exactly like this, is going to be exactly like this. That means whenever you write the test or whenever you start the test, you'll have to write the reading section first. Then you will have questions for listening section, and then comes speaking, and at last you'll get the writing section right about. All right. So this was the overview of the test. Now, moving on to the reading section, since this session is solely dedicated to the reading section of the TOEFL IBT. So we'll have to understand what all the reading section consists of. So you get 2 passages, as we have already established in the overview of the test. So you get 2 passages from academic texts, right? These passages are going to be about 700 words long each. And you'll always find 5 to 6 paragraphs in TOEFL reading passages. So based on 1 passage, you will get 10 questions. Most of the questions out of these 10 questions are worth 1 point, but the last question in each set is worth 2 points, and that question carries partial scoring as well. When I say most questions are worth 1 point, what I mean is question number 1 to question number 9, all the questions will carry 1 mark or 1 point. And all the first 9 questions will have 4 options, out of which a test taker is supposed to choose one correct option. But it's the last question in each set, which is the prose-summary question. That question is worth 2 points and it also carries partial scoring. I'll tell you how the partial scoring works. So when all the 9 other questions have 4 options, the last question, which is the 10th question, will have 6 options, out of which 3 options will be correct. So if a test taker comes up with all the 3 correct options, they'll get the full point for this question, which is 2. If they come up with 2 correct answers, then they'll get half a mark, which is 1. If they get anything less than 2 correct answers, then they will not be marked for this question. That means they'll get a 0. So that is how the partial scoring works. If you need me to reiterate, let me know in the chat and I'll make sure to reiterate the scoring. Now let's understand what kind of passages do we get in the TOEFL reading section. So typical academic genres include passages which are expository, which are narrative, which are argumentative as well. Now, what does it mean to have an expository passage? Now, if you break the word expository, what do you get? You get the word expose, right? So that means expository passages will expose you to a lot of information. These passages are always going to be factually loaded, and accordingly, you will have to, comprehend all the facts, which will help you answer the questions later. Similarly, a narrative passage will always narrate a sequence of events or an order of events. And questions will be based on that. And then you have an argumentative passage, which almost always forces the reader to take a stand on the topic or on the bigger claim that the passage makes. Now that we have talked about all the kind of passages or all types of passages that we get in the reading section, it's also important to understand that all the information in all these kind of different passages are going to be based or framed according to certain patterns. Now, what are those patterns? Those patterns are description. You could get a passage which is based on a compare and contrast pattern. You could also sometimes get a passage which is, based on a cause and effect pattern or a problem solution pattern. What does this mean exactly? This means that when a passage has a cause and effect pattern, you can always expect the passage to be structured in a certain way, which is you can see the cause being mentioned in the beginning of the passage, which in turn is relatively followed by lesser important details, which are the effects. Or it could be the vice versa, where the passage starts with some kind of effects, which in turn leads to the cause, right? So there are majorly 2 places that you'll always find the passage to be, including the main idea. Either it could be in the beginning of the passage or it could be in the end of the passage. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. Now, this slide, you see the reading learning objectives for the TOEFL IBT reading section. What I want all of you to do is, I want you to spend 2 minutes on the objectives, go through these objectives in detail, knowing that all these objectives pertains to one or more question types in the actual section, right? So once you go through the objectives, you will also get to understand what kind of questions are tested in the reading section. So please go through the objectives and then I will move ahead and I will discuss these objectives. At the same time, I will also show you the question types as well. Great. Let's start talking about these objectives, right? Now you see that the students will be able to identify the main idea of a reading passage. See, objectives always help to understand what has to be achieved at the end of a particular class. What is it that you have to learn at the end of a particular class? So being well versed with the objectives helps you not lose sight of, like I said, what has to be done in a particular class, right? It helps you not get diverted. So as you can see, it says that students will be able to identify the main idea of a reading passage. So this pertains to a gist question, right? Something that asks you about the overall gist or the outline of the passage. Yeah. The next one says students will be able to identify key facts and important information in a reading passage. What this means is this pertains to a specific purpose question. Questions which ask you about specific information which are stated in specific parts of the passage. Similarly, the next one says students will be able to recognize the logical order or sequencing of written material, right? So understanding coherence in the reading section is very much important because there is a question type which is called insert text that tests you on how well you can understand coherence and how well can you make the placement look correct so that the passage or the paragraph is, well transitioned in terms of sentences as well as paragraphs. Next one says students will also be able to identify vocabulary meaning. So this pertains to a question which is called vocabulary in context. TOEFL always tests you on the contextual meaning of vocabulary. What that means is you will have to find out in what sense or in what context the word has been used in the passage, but not really the literal meaning of the word. As we know, the words have two meanings, right? There is a literal meaning and there is a contextual meaning as well. So it all depends on how and where I'm using that particular word. Similarly, what else do we have to understand? That students will be able to recognize and create accurate paraphrases, which are basically summaries or restatements of information from a text. Now, this pertains to a question which is called sentence simplification question, wherein a sentence will be highlighted in the passage or in a particular paragraph, and you as a test taker will have to find out the most accurate paraphrase of that particular sentence out of the given options. What I mean by paraphrase is restatement. So you will have to look for an option which basically says the same thing as the sentence without really changing the meaning of it. What else do we have to keep in mind? That you will be able to understand why an author explains concepts in a certain way. Now, this belongs to an inference question, which is called a rhetorical purpose question, which almost always asks you about the author's tone. Why did the author use this example? Why does the author introduce this claim? Or why did the author object at this place? So if you understand sentence functions and transitions, you will be able to do this question pretty well. Similarly, you also get inference questions, right? Inference questions are considered a little trickier and harder, and there is a reason for that. The reason is we tend to always overthink when it comes to an inference question, right? We tend to go beyond the scope of the passage to sort of understand or to sort of answer this question. The approach for inference question should be very straightforward and direct. Ask yourself the right questions and you will get the right answer. So basically, the answers for inference questions will never be explicitly stated in the passage. You have to dig a little deeper, read between the lines, analyze a lot more to understand the author's tone, which in turn help you understand what exactly has been implied by the author, but not really explicitly stated. The answer is there, but it's there in a hidden format, which is why you have to dig a little bit deeper. Similarly, you also get questions where you are asked to summarize major ideas from the text. Now, this is exactly what refers to a prose-summary question, which is always the last question. Now, a prose-summary question always asks you to find out what are the major points made in the passage. As and when we are in that slide of a prose summary question, I will make sure to tell you how to go about a prose summary question and how you can make the approach simplified for you. All right. Moving on. Before we move on to the questions, I would like all of you to take a look at the question types. As you can see, all or any kind of reading happens in 3 stages, right? First, we read for comprehension, to sort of comprehend and understand what exactly are we going to read about, right? Something that helps us understand the outline or the gist of the passage. So please understand that basic comprehension questions are the easiest question to answer, right? So under basic comprehension, we have 4 question types. First one is a vocabulary question. Next, you get a sentence simplification question, which tests you on how well you understand paraphrase. Then you have a factual question, something that tells you to find or asks you to find out a fact from the given options. And then we have something called a negative factual question, which works just the backward or opposite of a factual questions. That means here, out of the 4 options, you will find one option which will have no mention in the passage, but the other 3 options will have been mentioned in the passage. So the option which doesn't have any proof in the passage is going to be your answer for a negative fact question. Similarly, when we go to inference questions, we have 3 questions, right? We have content inference, we have rhetorical purpose, and then we also have insert text question. Now, content inference question directly asks you what has been something or what is something that has been implied for this thing, for this particular thing in the question. Now, ask yourself, what am I asked about in the question? There you have your answer. The next question should be, what do I know about this thing from the passage? Please do not rely on your assumption or your interpretation for that matter to answer inference questions. The moment you overthink or rely on something that the passage is not privy to, your answer will most likely be wrong. So avoid, thinking or going beyond the scope of the passage and answering something which doesn't have proof in the passage. This is not just for TOEFL, this is for GRE as well. So content inference question is very straightforward in that matter, right? If I ask you that, if I tell you that I am not carrying an umbrella and it is going to rain now, right? So the next possible thought that I can guess, or the next possible thing that will happen is that I'm going to get drenched. Even though this is not something that we have in the context, but what we have in the context is that I do not have an umbrella and it is going to rain, correct? So this is how you need to guess based on what is given in the passage and what is your intellectual understanding on what is given in the passage, right? So that those are the things you need to assemble to be able to understand what is going to be the answer for an inference question. I've already told you about a rhetorical purpose question, which always asks you about the author's tone or the author's motive. Similarly, the insert text question asks you to place a given sentence in a particular square box, which of course I'll show you in a while. After placing the statement or after placing the sentence, you should be able to make sure that the placement makes sense. There is coherence in the paragraph and in the sentences as well. All right. And the last question or the 10th question is always going to be a prose summary question. And like we have already established, a prose summary question is of 2 marks or 2 points and it carries partial scoring as well. So before I take you to each and every question in detail, I would like to show you all the 10 questions in the slide that you can currently see. This slide includes all the questions that are tested in the reading section. Please remember that all these 10 questions more or less follow the same order and they are more or less framed in the same way as well. All right. So take a look at this question. You can feel free to take a screenshot or a photo, whatever is feasible to you. And then I will move forward and I'll show you individual questions and we'll try to, work out the questions together. Okay, I hope all of you have taken a look at the questions. If I ask you, what do you think question number 7 is? What kind of a question based on the question types that we have discussed already? What is going to be your answer for that? Question number 7.
I request everyone to post your answers in the chat box, so it would be an interactive session and it would be very good for us also to understand whether we are doing it the right way or not. So I request everyone to be active and post the things on the chat box. I have made, yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll now move on to basic comprehension questions first. And we'll try to discuss those 4 questions that come under basic comprehension, which are vocabulary questions, sentence simplification question, factual question, and negative factual question. We'll start off with a vocabulary question itself. And this is something this is how the vocabulary in context question looks like in the TOEFL. And I want you to understand that TOEFL tests you on very basic vocabulary, right? Most of the students have this inhibition about vocabulary, right? That what are the kind of words we have to learn? How many words do we have to learn? But please be rest assured that TOEFL tests you on very basic vocabulary, which doesn't require word preparation or learning vocabulary separately, right? If you look at this question says in the animal world, the task of moving about is fulfilled in many ways. For some animals, locomotion is accomplished by changes in body shape. So the question asks you, the word locomotion in the passage is closest in meaning to. Now, the best approach or the best way to go about this question is to read only that particular sentence which has that word highlighted in it, because that will save you a lot of time. First of all, this is a specific question, and to answer a specific question, you do not need to go through the entire passage. So just by reading the sentence where the sentence is highlighted, if you still do not get the context, you can choose to read a sentence above and you can choose to read a sentence below, and that will give you enough context, which will help you understand what exactly should be your answer, right? What else you can do is, especially when you find the vocabulary question a little complex, is try to remove that word from the sentence. Based on the insight or clue of the sentence, try to predict a word of your own, right? And then when you go to the options, try to see if you have a match for the word that you have come up with. Now here, if you look at the word locomotion, we know that locomotion is the task of moving about, something that we have in the sentence. Now that is directly going to match with movement. So this is how you should go about answering vocabulary questions. Sometimes understanding root words and affixes are also going to help you in guessing the meaning of a word if you don't know the meaning of that particular word, right? So here, locomotion has the root word motion, which is nothing but movement. So the correct answer here will be movement. Similarly, for the second question, it says some poisonous snake bites need to be treated immediately or the victim will suffer paralysis. So here, suffer paralysis is basically losing the ability to move. It cannot be option B, become unconscious, because that doesn't make sense in the context, and that's not what suffering paralysis means. And it also definitely cannot be option C and option D. All right. So here for these 2 vocabulary questions, the correct answers are going to be movement and losing the ability to move. All right. Now on my screen, you see a factual question. A factual question always asks you to find out a fact from the given 4 options, right? Something that has got clear proof in the passage. So what I would like you to do is, I would like you to read through the passage, take a minute, read through the passage, and then we are going to discuss how to do this question. So if you have read the passage, let's go to the questions now. Question. So the question says, according to paragraph 2, sculptors in the Italian Renaissance stopped using cannonballs and bronze statues of horses because you'll always find factual questions to be framed in this particular way, where you'll have the reference for a particular paragraph, which you have for any other question, but something that will end in because. Not all the time, but most of the times, right? So option A says they began using a material that made the statues weigh less, right? They did not switch materials to make the statues lighter. They used iron braces inside, correct? So option A cannot be the correct option here. Option B says they found a way to strengthen the statues internally, which is correct. They stopped using cannonballs because they learned to make the statues stronger inside, which matches with the last sentence of the paragraph. If you can see, it has the clear mention, which is why we take option B to be the correct answer, because we have this fact in the passage itself. Now, if you look at option C, it says the aesthetic taste of the public had changed over time. The passage does not mention any changes in public taste, anything about public taste, which is why option C also cannot be the correct answer, because it is completely irrelevant or completely out of scope, something that the passage doesn't have proof of. And the last one says the cannonballs added too much weight to the statues. Again, the cannonballs were used because of structural needs and not because of the weight, right? So here also it doesn't answer our question. So the correct answer here is going to be option B. Similarly, the next one is a negative factual question, which works just the opposite of a factual questions. So here, out of the 4 options, you'll find 3 options having proof in the passage. That means these 3 options could have been definitely mentioned somewhere in the passage. But then there will be that one option which will have no proof in the passage. And that one is going to be your answer. So as you can see, the correct answer is already given here, which is option A. And I also want you to look at the way the question is framed. The passage discusses applied art objects in relation to all of the following except, right? So you'll always find the word except in negative factual questions, and reading that will help you understand that, okay, this is a negative factual question and this is how I have to go about it, right? So here option A is the answer, because the passage talks about materials and function, but it doesn't directly address specific techniques that are used in the construction of the cannonballs, right? Which is why option A is going to be the correct answer. Now, this is a sentence simplification question. I'll tell you how a sentence simplification question is framed. So what will happen is, you will find a sentence which will be highlighted in a particular or a specific paragraph in the entire passage. The question basically asks you to find out the most accurate paraphrase or restatement of the highlighted sentence or the sentence that is in boldface from the given options. Please remember that when you do a sentence simplification question, you'll very easily be able to answer two options, right? The actual task is in choosing the correct answer from the two options that you'll be down to. So you have to make sure that you're not choosing any option which is partially correct, something that matches with half, a part of the sentence, but the other half doesn't match. So those are called partially correct answers, which you should not, of course, choose. You have to be able to choose an answer choice which very aptly paraphrases the entire highlighted sentence. So I'll give you a minute, maybe try to answer this question, and I'll tell you what exactly is going to be the answer for this. So the highlighted sentence says, since the laws of physics, not some arbitrary decision, have basic patterns, so much so that functional forms can vary only within certain limits, right? And that is what we have to find the paraphrase for. So let's go to the first option. The first option says functional applied art objects cannot vary much from basic patterns determined by the form or by the laws of physics. Now, that is exactly what the sentence says, right? That functional objects like pods or buildings have shapes that make them work well. These shapes are mostly decided by the laws of physics, something like how the gravity works, right? So they cannot really change a lot from those basic shapes without not working right. It cannot be the second option because option B says the function of applied art object is determined by basic patterns in the laws of physics. This is very broad because it doesn't specify that it's the form or shape of the objects that are determined by physics. Correct? It also cannot be option C. Option C says, since functional applied art objects vary only within certain limits, arbitrary decisions cannot have determined their general form. So this actually reverses the whole answer choice, right? It reverses the cause and effect as well. It's not that they cannot vary much because of arbitrary decisions. It's the law of physics that limit their variation, right? And option D here is again incorrect and completely irrelevant because it suggests that general form is decided by something arbitrary, which contradicts the passage, right? Which states that it determines or it is determined by the laws of physics, which is why option A is going to be the correct answer here. Now, I am showing you a prose-summary question, which is not something that I necessarily want you to do, but I would like you to take a look at the prose-summary question. Please see that there are 6 options and the 3 correct options have already been derived, right? You also have information on the scoring as well down below, which says that partial credit will be used for scoring this question type. Test takers can receive scores of 0 to 2 points. If they select only one correct answer, they will receive 0 points. If they select 2 correct answers, they'll receive 1 point. And if you come up with all the 3 correct answers, then you'll get the full mark for this question, which is 2 points. All right. Next up, I'm going to show you an inference question, which will give you an idea about how inference question works. First step, whenever you are reading a question stem and you find the word infer or imply in the question stem, at once you should get to know that, okay, this is an inference question and I know exactly how the approach should be. Now, this question says, which of the following can be inferred from paragraph 1 about candles before the 19th century? Now, the question you should ask yourself is, what exactly am I asked in the question? You are asked about candles before 19th century. Now, when we go to the passage, we have to ask ourselves, what do we know about candles before the 19th century? So let's go ahead and read the passage. So the passage says the 19th century brought with it a burst of new discoveries and inventions that revolutionized the candle industry and made lighting available to all. In the early to mid 19th century, a process was developed to refine tallow with alkali and sulfuric acid. The result was a product called stearin. Stearin is harder and burns longer than unrefined tallow. This breakthrough meant that it was possible to make tallow candles that would not produce the usual smoke and rancid odor. Sterins were also derived from palm oil, so vegetable waxes as well as animal fats could be used to make candles, right? Now, we know that we are asked something about candles before the 19th century, but we have to ask ourselves, do we know anything in the passage which refers to candles before 19th century? No. All we know is that the 19th century revolutionized the candle industry. So basically what we are trying to guess here is that before the 19th century, candles were not available to all or lighting was not available to all, right? Let's go through the options. The first option say they did not smoke when they burned. Well, they did smoke, which is why they produced smoke and rancid odor, right? So definitely there was smoke. This is why this option is a reversal option. Now, when we go to the next option, it says they produced a pleasant odor as they burned, which is again a reversal. They did not produce a pleasant odor, but they produced a bad odor or a rancid odor, right? Option C says they were not available to all, which is our correct answer because we do not have any information of candles before the 19th century, which sort of helps us understand that maybe candles were not available before the 19th century, right? And then the last one says they contain sulfuric acid, which is completely irrelevant. It's just a product which was, used in the refining process of candles. So that is how you go about an inference question. Next up, you have a rhetorical purpose question, which always starts with why does the author do this or why does the author do that, right? Again, you will have an option or a sentence which is highlighted in the passage. And the question will ask you basically, why did the author say this at this particular place? Was he trying to support something? Was he trying to object to something? Was the author trying to, claim something here? So understanding sentence functions and understanding transition words or single phrases will definitely help you answer this question. And last but not the least, we have an insert text question. So what will happen in this question is you'll be given a sentence, all right? And you'll have 4 square boxes in a particular paragraph in the entire passage. Now, your job is to find out the given sentence will best fit in which one of these four square boxes so that the coherence remains the same and the transition makes sense and the placement of the sentence also makes sense. It doesn't look disaligned, right? So the sentence here says, the sentence that we are given here is all 3 of them have strengths and weaknesses, but none adequately answers all of the questions the paintings present. Now let's go to the passage and read. This is how you should be able to go about this question, right? Your job is to directly go to the passage and read through it slowly. Make sure that you do not read the entire paragraph twice. So the passage or the paragraph says scholars offer 3 related but different opinions about this puzzle. One opinion is that the paintings were a record of the seasonal migrations made by the birds. Because some paintings were made directly over others, obliterating them, it is probable that a painting's value ended with the migration it pictured. Unfortunately, this explanation fails to explain the hidden locations unless the migrations were celebrated with secret ceremonies, right? Now, if you look at these sentences, you'll see that they're trying to reason or give reasons for something one by the other. And there is a keyword in the given sentence that we have that all three of them had strengths and weaknesses. So it makes sense to place this sentence in the first square box because after that, they start talking about the strengths and the weaknesses, right? What happens? One by the other. So the next three sentences that you see are all evidences or examples, which is why it makes sense to put this sentence in the first square box so that it acts like a claim or a conclusion, which is then followed by different evidences. So this is how you go about this question type, which is insert text. All right. I think with that, I am pretty much done with my side of the presentation. I have told you about all the question types and what exactly should be the approach to these question types. Please remember that when you start your TOEFL IBT reading comprehension preparation, go slow. Focus on understanding the question types. That's very, very important. Do not be bothered or do not be disheartened when you see such a long passage because you are not going to deal with the entire passage at once. One of the huge advantages that TOEFL IBT has is that in the reading section, each and every question will carry a certain reference. That reference is nothing but the paragraph number from where you can locate the answer from. So that means question number 1 will say, according to so and so paragraph, what is the author's opinion. So I know that I don't have to look elsewhere, but I just have to look at paragraph 1 and I will find my answer. So you're not dealing with the entire passage at once. Rather, you're dealing with the entire passage one paragraph at a time. So how it will help you answer a prose summary question is, whenever you're answering all the 9 questions, you are going to the passage, the specific paragraphs and trying to find out the answer. As and when you're reading through the paragraphs, try to find out the most important sentence or the key sentence from each and every paragraph. At the end, you will have 5 to 6 key sentences. And like I said, a prose summary question always has 6 options. So because we have the key sentences from the entire passage, do you not think that it will help you eliminate the 3 answer choices or the 3 irrelevant answer choices that the prose summary question has based on all the key pointers that you have from the entire passage? It will help you do that. So try to find out the most important sentence from each of those paragraphs, something that the paragraph is revolving around, and that will help you eliminate the answers for a prose summary question. And ultimately, you will find the 3 correct options for a prose summary question. So go slow, understand the question types, try to understand the patterns of the passages, and all this is going to help you a lot in the long run. All right. So I think with that, I will stop my presentation and I'm now open to any kind of questions or doubts you may have. Please put them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Rutu Parna. That was really insightful. Like before we go ahead with the questions part, I just wanted to give a quick brief about Galvanize and what we do and how we help students to get the best admits with scholarships. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll just present my screen. Galvanize Global Education, assistance for your study abroad journey. So we have top ranked mobile apps for our GRE, SAT and vocabulary preparation on both available on App Store and Play Store with users from 195 plus countries and more than 1 million organic downloads. We also have our test preparations online available for GRE, TOEFL, IELTS and SAT. Customers from 65 plus countries have chosen Galvanize and they have an average score improvement of 20 percentile. We also help with admission counseling for undergrad, masters, doctorate, and MBA. 20 students from 20 plus countries have chosen us, and we have a success rate of 99%, where we help students to receive admits to 140 plus specializations and across 16 plus countries. So perks and advantages of our disparate courses are personalized study plan, unlimited ask an expert, in-depth analytics and feedback, personalized AWA essay scoring, practice questions, free full-length mock test. The benefits are updated test pattern, most affordable, complete solution. You can use it from anywhere, and you have unlimited ask an expert guidance available. Next up is how our admission counseling work. We onboard students with a free profile evaluation call based on students' profile form. We shortlist universities into 3 different categories: ambitious, practical, and safe. Then the documentation process comes up. Final draft of resume, SOP, and LOR based on the inputs given by the students. We help with the visa counseling, finance guidance, and pre-departure services like travel tickets, forex, bank accounts. So here you go. Claim a free profile evaluation today and know where you stand among others. The link will be active for next 10 minutes. I have also shared the link on the chat box. I request everyone to fill up. Also, Galvanize is running a Diwali offer for next 2 days. It's like get up to 25% off on Galvanize services. Please make sure you fill up the profile evaluation, talk to our expert, understand what's your need, and get discount of 25% on Galvanize services. So yeah, now we are ready for questions. I request everyone to post your questions on the chat box so we can take up off from there. So Rutu Parna, there's a question, like any suggestion with the speaking section?
Well, yes. I mean, the speaking section again is extensive, right? We have 2 kind of tasks in speaking. One is independent speaking, which requires your opinion, and the other is integrated speaking, which requires you to summarize and paraphrase the information. Please make sure that that your response addresses to the task of the question, because that's where most people get confused, right? Whenever you are answering the independent task, make sure to use terms or keywords like that. Make sure to come up with examples, because no opinion will be convinced without any examples. Similarly, in the integrated task, make sure to use certain keywords which show that you're summarizing and paraphrasing the information. Do not add anything which is not there in the resource. Only stick to the information that you're provided in the form of resources, the written and the oral resource. All right. So that's something that you have to take care of.
One more thing I need to update you guys, like I have already shared the TOEFL discount code to your email addresses. So people who have registered for the session and they have attended, you would have received an email with TOEFL discount code. You can use the code and claim discount while you register for ETS TOEFL examination. Make sure you use the link, view the code, and get the discount. Why pay more when Galvanize is here to help you out?
Okay, there's another question. How long should I spend reading the paragraph on the first run to keep worth the time constraints? Well, you do not need to read the passage at first. You can directly move to the questions, and it's a good idea to come from the questions to the passage when you're dealing with a TOEFL passage. Because to read a passage which is about 700 words long, we will not have enough time. So because we have clear references for each and every paragraph in the questions, it's a good idea to come from the questions to the passage. Thank you. Any other questions?
Give me a minute, Rutu Parna, I'll check. Yeah, I guess there is no other question. So before we wrap up, guys, here's a form which I'm sharing it on the chat box. This is a Diwali discount if you want, if you are interested to claim up to 25% off on Galvanize services. Please fill up the details and our expert will reach out to you shortly.
Okay, I think there is one more question. Another question, does the listening passage, okay, is the listening passage a part of the 35 minutes? First of all, if this question is about the listening section, the total duration in the listening section is 36 minutes. And yes, the audios are a part of those 36 minutes. Thank you, Aditya. All right, I think we have no more questions.
Yeah, looks fine. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Rutu Parna, for this wonderful session. Yeah, it's time to wrap up now. And the biggest thing, happy Diwali to everyone. Be safe and enjoy at the most. Thanks, Rutu Parna. Thanks, guys, for joining for the wonderful session today.
Thank you. Happy Diwali to you too and to everybody present.